2 hours ago, during the 177th beta test of the fantasy world, a battle with the final boss. A blonde young man in a red raincoat stands in front of a huge explosion and yawns. He says he wants it all to be over as soon as possible, because this is the 177th time, and complains that there is no way to skip the plot in this broken game. A large red eye appears in the explosion. A window pops up in which it is written that this is the destroyer of the worlds of Sinlot. This is a creature of the 100th level. He is the final boss of the fantasy world, the source of the destruction of all things. From the day of the creation of the world until today, he was killed only 6 times by chosen warriors, but he is tenacious like a cockroach, and in 1,000 years he can easily resurrect. The eye grows into a huge black figure with golden lines on the body. The young man looks at it from a cliff and says that the player enters the game as a chosen warrior to kill the Sinlot and save all living things from death, and this is his 6th resurrection since the start of beta testing. The blonde opens his window, in which it is written that his player's name is me. He is a creature of the 100th level, and a very long list of his specialties. Zia says that this gameplay is very boring. He presses the button Start a Deadly Race and immediately dodges the tentacles of the Destroyer of Worlds. He runs up the tentacle and, holding out his hand with a glowing blue ring, shouts that he is already here. A blue star appears from the ring, which covers the eye of the blue. Zia jumps high up, creates a huge hammer out of ice and hits the monster with all his might, shouting the number 80. The Destroyer of Worlds explodes, but does not disappear. Zia is surprised that one blow was not enough and hits his hammer out of ice 5 more times. Sinlot, who has already noticeably shrunk in size, asks him to stop and not hit anymore and asks who he is. Zia replies that he is just a simple player who kills him for the 176th time. He unexpectedly notes that he has set a new record, since he defeated the Destroyer of Worlds in just 1 minute and 15 seconds. Sinlot asks why he has been reborn 6 times, but has not seen him killed so many times. The blonde replies that this has nothing to do with his gameplay, because beta testing has been restarted as many as 177 times, and each restart is a separate cycle, so the Sinlot cannot remember anything when it is reborn. He advises him not to pay attention to it, as there will be something more important next, and puts his hand in his pants. Sinlot asks in horror what he is going to do. Zia turns to face him and the Destroyer of Worlds screams in horror that he warns him that he is the ruler of the world and sooner or later all people will definitely become his food and he cannot. Zia pulls out a black leaf with red veins and Sinlot says that these are leaves from the magical depths that heal dark creatures and asks where he got such a jewel. The blonde shouts at him not to flutter his tongue in vain and eat these leaves as soon as possible. Sinlot desperately asks not to touch his mouth. After the young man stuffed the leaves into him, the healed Destroyer of Worlds asks why he cured him. Zia casually waves his hand and says that he shouldn't thank him and he will have to help him with one very important matter. Sinlot shouts to the blonde to listen to him and grows rapidly, saying that he will die and does not dare to underestimate him. An explosion is heard, and the Destroyer of Worlds shrinks, falling to the ground. Zia dusts off his hands and says that he has already reported that he knows him well, and does not think that a Sinlot has the same short memory as a fish. The monster asks what it should help the young man with. The blonde man turns around and says that the matter is very simple and he wants to use his power in order to defeat Owlin Force. Sinlot says that this is the same warrior maiden and is it really so necessary for him, a sacred warrior, to fight with a protective deity. Zia says that after so many restarts, he has explored every corner here, and he knows more than 100 ways to kill the Destroyer of Worlds, and he is terribly bored with everything here. And the only thing he has not seen here yet is one of her incarnations. He says that one day Owlin Silu told him that in a desperate situation she could become one with the sacred blade of Nasir, and in this case she would release divine energy that would purify the whole world, and this embodiment of her is absolutely amazing. Sinlot says that he is a brave guy and truly the son of the abyss, since only such a person could betray his comrades and sacrifice humanity for such a boring cause. Zia asks him to keep his sarcasm to himself. The blonde says that this time he has achieved her sympathy to the highest degree, but so far he has not touched her, because he wants Owlin Silu to preserve her wonderful purity, and at the most delicate moment he is going to corner her and see her in the most beautiful guise. He laughs loudly and waves his hands. Sinlot says that this guy is definitely very spoiled. 177th beta test of the fantasy world, the Fortress of Sinlot. All the warriors of light have arrived on the battlefield. Zia is sitting on a huge throne. 2 girls are standing next to him. The third one gives the young man a cup, kneeling. Above the head of the blonde hangs a blue hood. Ziya says that they have finally arrived, because an hour has already passed and the passage of the plot is terribly slow. The Destroyer of Worlds asks if he should not be on the side of the Warriors of Light now. The young man asks what he is talking about and thinks that since everyone has already arrived, you can start. He releases a huge old ice from the ring, which freezes all the Warriors of Light in one moment. The Destroyer of Worlds takes off into the air and asks what kind of terrifying ability to freeze, and that all the Warriors of Light were frozen into a huge block of ice with one blow, and even this woman could not dodge. He asks what he should do next. A dark-haired girl in open clothes and with a big sword in her hands shouts Ziya's name and breaks a block of ice. She angrily shouts that he is a traitor. Ziya calmly looks at the girl and greets her affably, calling her Ao Lin Silu, and grins at the fact that, it seems, his ice was not enough at all to extinguish her inner fire. Ao Lin Silu takes off and shouts that he is a traitor and she will never forgive him. A window is displayed where it is written that the relationship with Ao Lin Silu has turned from a close friendship into enmity. Ziya looks at her with a bored expression. The girl strikes a strong blow, but it is blocked by a sinlot. One of her shoulder pads flies off. Ao Lin Silu looks at Ziya with hatred. The Destroyer of Worlds showers the earth with a multitude of fiery arrows. The blonde guy says he almost did it. When the smoke clears, the young man sees the wounded Ao Lin Force leaning on his sword. She gasps and asks why he betrayed her and humanity. The girl screams at him with hatred to answer. Ziya picks his ear with boredom and replies that he did it because he is very bored. The brunette asks again. The sinlot increases in size, and the blonde stands on his back. He asks if she thinks there is some reason to hate and cause suffering. Ziya shouts that Ao Lin Silu is just a toy for him. The girl insults him. The young man asks her to start soon. The Destroyer of Worlds says that he is looking forward to it with great impatience. Sinlot rumbles that he will destroy these helpless creatures with pity and destroy this world. His enemies have made it clear to him that as long as people care about the past, they have no future, so this time he will grant them an equal death. Everything is born from the abyss and dies in the abyss. Ao Lin Silu shouts that Ziya will pay for everything. A large golden glowing sword appears, and its light blinds everyone around except Ziya. A window appears in which it is written that the name of this character is Ao Lin Silu. She is a being of the highest divine form. The warrior maiden, who merged with the sword of Nasir, was sent by the gods in a hopeless situation in order to bring endless light to the world together with the sword of hope. The girl begins to merge with the sword, and Ziya admiringly says that this is the most beautiful thing he has ever seen. Ao Lin Silu opens her pink eyes. The blonde man stretches out his hand to her. Suddenly, a notification sound is heard, where it is written that the closed beta testing of the Fantasy World version 177.0 is completed. Data is being deleted. Data deletion is completed. The public version is open. We wish you good luck in the game. The action takes place in a small flourishing village. Ziya wakes up in a small house on a hard bed and mutters that it seems to be over again. He opens his character window, where it is written that his race is a half-elf and that all his possessions are equal to 50 coppers. The young man thinks that he assumed this, and it seems that the new incarnation of the warrior maiden can kill the Destroyer of the Worlds of Sinlot with one blow, and this 177th beta test of the game ended too quickly. The blonde sees the character update of Ao Lin Silu, called the True Warrior Maiden, and thinks that who would have thought. After she experienced the betrayal of her closest friend and saw the painful death of her comrades in arms, the sacred sword of Nasir forcefully filled her with divine essence, and so Ao Lin Silu met its true end. Ziya thinks that the author of the plot of this game is very stupid and careless, because he is not afraid that he will be allowed to mincemeat after this, and that the fallen warrior maiden was still better. He sits on the bed and puts on his boots, fastens his belt and pushes the front door, saying that let a new cycle begin. Ziya goes out onto a narrow, sunlit street where the villagers walk and says that no matter what happens, he always starts from here and everything is as usual, the sunlight irritating him. The inhabitants of the settlement do the same thing. A ball flies into the young man's head, but he manages to intercept it on the fly and says through his teeth that this has happened more than 100 times. The blonde throws the ball away and exclaims why nothing can be changed here at all. The ball ricochets off the fences and knocks down a man. A large spotted cat jumps down from a tree. Zia picks up the cat and hides it in her bosom, picks up the box and takes the bag from the man that he was carrying in his hands. He thinks that even though nothing changes, it's convenient to speed up and break records. The young man approaches the headman, greets him affably and informs him that he has come to hand over the tasks from the ads. The headman shouts that there is no need to joke with him and it is better for him to leave, because he has not posted anything on the bulletin board yet. A black-haired man approaches them and says that he has brought today's announcements, where it is written that Naidin has lost a large spotted cat from the entrance to the village. A theft has occurred in Lycee's tavern, and several necessary materials are missing to repair the fence. The headman tears the ads into small pieces and joyfully congratulates Zia on the fact that he has proved his strength and from now on every resident of the village will be his friend. The young man flips through his character window, where notifications about the addition of sympathy and money are displayed. The basic sympathy of the settlers is 50. The blonde thinks that for credibility in this game there is no clear help when completing tasks, as in reality, you have to look for everything yourself. At first it was very difficult and interesting, but after the 177th speedrun it became boring. He remembers that, having 50 stats of the initial sympathy of the settlers, it is possible to get closer to her. For all these beta tests, the only entertainment that he has never tired of is passing the most different types of girls in the fantasy world. But in this settlement for beginners there is only one girl who is worthy of passing. A buxom girl with a long blonde braid is hanging out underwear. The wind snatches the handkerchief from her hands, and she screams. Zia easily catches a rag and greets her affably, calling her Mrs. Weist. The girl thanks him for his help and wishes him a good morning. A character window pops up in which it is written that her name is Scylla Weist. She is on the 14th level, a former adventurer, now married. One of the strongest warriors of the novice settlement. With her the main character will always be full, well-off and happy. Her husband is a very bad man and only knows what to molest women in a pub. The young man says that it's nothing and thinks that he is going to cultivate their friendship again, which will eventually yield the richest fruits. Zia asks if it's true that her husband didn't spend the night at home last night. Scylla asks how he found out about it. The blonde thinks that he has been through this story more than 100 times and has learned everything by heart for a long time. Nothing can surprise him anymore. Mrs. Weist asks if the young man has heard about that incident with the brave wanderers. Zia wonders if the plot has finally been updated. Male voices are heard. One of them asks if it's here. One man asked them to give his wife flowers and it looks like it will be possible to be treated once for free. 3 guys appear, dressed in green. He says that this is his wife, with a baby face and big breasts, and who can stand it here. Now he is very jealous of this man. The lilac-haired one asks who is standing next to Scylla, a player or a game character, and how he turned out to be faster than them. The third guy says that the young man looks at them and seems to hear them and asks them to speak lower. Zia does not understand how it is possible that there are real people in the game. He says they shouldn't even dream of hitting on Scylla. The blonde begins to argue with himself in his thoughts. He shouts to himself that it is not so important now, because he has started a new 177 times and living. People have finally appeared in this game. People have entered it, which means that he will be able to get out of it. He is stuck in this game for 177 cycles. He will finally be able to get out of here. And then he answers himself that he needs to cool down and it's not known if it's good or not. Maybe these people just hacked the game. The young man shouts that he will go to them and now the most important thing is to get out of here. He replies to himself that suddenly after hacking it is impossible to get out and he needs to cool down. Mrs. Weist calls out to Zia and he replies that he was thinking a little and could he help her with something else. Scylla asks the young man to bring her sword and not worry, because she will not attack everyone, especially since the beta version has just become public and she needs the support of influential and authoritative people, so they are all to some extent chosen. Zia tries to lift a huge two-handed sword and says that with only 5 units of strength, it will be really very difficult to do. He looks back at Scylla Weist, who is surrounded by guys and thinks that they are really beginners, since they were not afraid to molest a swordsman of the 14th level, and do not think that the local game characters are just programs. In the fantasy world, 101, they are all living people. They can breed and deceive, they can love and hate, or they can die. After death, all tasks related to the character are transferred to someone else, and this character disappears without a trace. The lilac-haired man holds out flowers and asks if she is Mrs. Weist, and her husband asked her to give her this bouquet of flowers. He is very sorry that he could not return home because he was busy taking care of the wounded. The one dressed in green says that if she needs help with something, she can safely contact them and they are always at her service, as it is an honor for them. Sila is clearly annoyed by their harassment and frowns with displeasure. Zia says that really they have not seen women in reality. He drags his sword across the grass and thinks that for 1,000 years of living together in this world, all the game characters have become closer to him than the players. The young man terribly swings his sword from behind and thinks that it is very important to get out, but he is not ready to leave all these girls. Zia strikes hard. The guys immediately scatter in different directions, swearing dirty. Dressed in green, he shouts where this psycho got out of and is he really tired of living. He swings, but the young man hits him in the face with the flat of his sword. The third guy asks who he is and how he dared to attack them. The lilac-haired one drags his friends away and shouts at them not to build a 13th level, because if he is a game character, then the plot will surely start, and can he imagine how shameful it will be to die during the passage of the plot. And if he is a player, then if he has a weapon from the very opening of the server, then he does not a simple player, but a werewolf. Zia thinks this guy understands. Sila raises her sword and says that he saved her again and thanks her from the bottom of her heart. She asks why he did it, being so weak. The blonde scratches his head and says that it's still good that he did it. He thinks that it's not for nothing that Sila has 25 power stats. With his current characteristics, this sword can easily crush him. The girl asks why. Zia replies that these are brave wanderers who are accepted by the headman, most likely for some work in the village. And what would people say if Mrs. Weiss started fighting with them? And then the headman would also have a very difficult time. So it's best for him to deal with such matters and let him accept all the consequences, if there are any. A window appears where it says that Sila's sympathy has increased by 20 stats. Mrs. Weiss pats Z on the head and thanks, adding that if these guys offend him, let him call her and her husband. He says he will come often. The blonde says that, most likely, Ms. Weiss remembers the town of Panta, destroyed by a monster 4 years ago. After she cleaned up the city, she rescued a seriously injured child from the basement of a collapsed house. But then in a hurry she only managed to leave clean water and food, and then left. Sila turns pale and covers her face with her hands. Zia says that this child was him. He thinks that, of course, it's a lie, and he doesn't know if that child survived. After passing the Sila, she tells a story from her life, for which her conscience is most knowing. The same expectant and desperate look of a child whom she is unable to help. But only she and her husband Ok know about this secret. Therefore, every time he impersonated that child, he received maximum sympathy at one moment. This information can only be obtained with time at the moment of passing. If you go through the plot several times, you will never notice this almost imperceptible Easter egg. But with the help of this little Easter egg, he can quickly fill the sympathy, get the strongest warrior in the settlement of newcomers, quickly increase his level, earn experience and reputation in the settlement, and he can also fill the void in her heart. Sila exclaims, "Did he really survive?" The young man confirms this. Ms. Weiss asks if her husband Ok told him this while drunk. Zia says that then she left 3 pieces of black bread and 2 flasks of water. It was all she and her husband had left, and other people refused to help. She also told him not to be afraid and everything would be fine. And on these words and rations he lasted another week until the church saved him. Tears flow down the girl's cheeks. She throws the sword to the ground and asks for forgiveness for throwing it then. Zia tells her not to apologize and only thanks to her he was able to survive. And now he just needs to see her. Sila hugs him with force and he thinks that sympathy has filled up. Now it remains to help her throw this Ok to be with him. A window pops up in which it is written that the blonde is now a close friend of Ms. Weiss. Sila says she will take him to Ok, who will also be happy. Zia says she has to report that her husband cheated on her. Ms. Weiss asks why he is defaming her husband, because he also saved him. Zia says that this is not slander at all, and since April he often does not spend the night at home. And all his reasons are excuses. Everyone knows about Mrs. Sonia from the pub and the headman, just no one talks about it. We can say that this is his chance to thank her, and he will find evidence and expose Mr. Weiss. Zia quickly hides behind the corner of the house and does not understand what is happening here. He opens his character's window and asks why there is no exit option here. The blonde thinks that suddenly he is the only one stuck in this game, like old Kirito. Or maybe everything is still much worse, and his body no longer exists at all, or, even more unlikely, he has been reborn in this boring game. Zia tells himself to keep himself in hand, because this is not at all accurate yet, and if he acts recklessly and is noticed, the system may even regard him as a bug and permanently erase him. Before you start looking for a way to get out, you need to figure out how to knock out the information he needs from those unsuccessful players. And you also need to gain reputation and experience, increase public trust. In general, prepare as thoroughly as possible. Only new players are a very serious problem. In this game, absolutely all the game characters are unique except for class tasks. All the others are launched only once. After the task is completed or the game character has died, a new game character will appear with a new task. And before the players mess up here, he needs to go through everything as soon as possible. When the game is just starting, Mrs. Sonia's pub is still closed, so there should be no problems. Ziya takes off and quickly runs away. He reaches a simple wooden house illuminated by the morning sun. A window is illuminated in which it is written that Sony's pub is a very famous drinking establishment in the village, which opens every day at 8 in the evening, closes at 6 in the morning. Due to the fact that the boss of the pub is a foreign savage from the red steppes of the north, opinions about her are very divided, as someone really likes her and someone rejects her. However, despite this, no one can not come to her pub for delicious and unique gym cakes, so the same for her special dish of barbarians. Suddenly, a lilac-haired man appears with his friends and, brandishing a kitchen rolling pin, menacingly asks why I attacked them, and if he does not give them a decent explanation, he will regret it very much. But it seems that he is a real psycho, because even in the real world no one has ever dared to treat them like that. The blonde carefully examines the rolling pin and asks if he bought it from Jim at the bakery, and that he must have told him that he once killed a whole bunch of monsters with it. The purple-haired man asks with horror how he found out about it. Ziya says that at the beginning of the game each player has only 50 coppers. For the first time it is ideal for renting a house, since on the territory of a private dwelling the recovery rate is 3 times higher than on the street, and it's just more convenient. He grins and says that he did save them, because Ms. Sila Weist is a level 14 swordsman, and if you make her angry, it won't seem enough to anyone. Even with a 3-time recovery, they would have to meditate in the wall for a whole day. The lilac-haired one shouts that this is impossible, and that she is just a game character. Ziya says that it doesn't matter and he shouldn't underestimate this game at all. And wasn't it the most ordinary game character who bred them for money with a simple piece of wood? The lilac-haired man angrily throws the rolling pin away and says that there has just been a misunderstanding and his name is air conditioning. And these are his friends, a soft drink and brandy. He apologizes for the recent and considers it only his joint. The air conditioner sends a request to friends. The blonde thinks that he has changed very quickly and falls to his knees, shouting that if you can add friends here, it means that he is also a player, also a living person, and not a bug at all. After a few thousand years, other players appeared at the very beginning of this game, which means that there was simply no network connection before. Ziya, I don't understand why I haven't seen such an interface before, but he believes that it's not so important yet. In any case, it will certainly help him get out of this game. The air conditioner asks which server Ziya came from. The blonde replies that he is a very ordinary player. Friends look at each other and a blue window is displayed in front of Ziya, in which it is written that this is a deal offer. He looks at the 3 guys uncomprehendingly and asks what it means. The air conditioner, a little embarrassed, says that this is gratitude for the warning of the boss and he believes that it would be better for them to pay him instead of paying rent, and so the benefits will be many times more. Ziya thinks that this guy is very tactful, and if he had money earlier, it would really be much more comfortable to act. Well, whose bread he eats, he sings a song. By clicking on the button, he agrees to accept the offer of a deal. All the guys are jumping for joy. Ziya says that Mrs. Weist has just given birth to a baby and she does not have enough milk. And in the west of this settlement a shepherd has lost a goat leader, and after they help him find a goat, he will gladly give them goat milk. They have to figure out how to complete these 2 tasks, and then they can learn from Sila the swordsman's ability called Death Strike. Brandy and a soft drink shout that Ziya even knows that Sila doesn't have enough milk and their boss is very cool. The blonde tells them to be more attentive and then they will understand everything. He thinks that, of course, Ms. Weiss did not tell him about it, and it seems to him that they did not notice something strange about him, since they can add friends, make deals with him, they can chat quietly. Before that, you need to find out more. A dating button has been added to the system window, and is it because he talked to new players? Ziya thinks that after more than 100 cycles of the game, he sees the dating option inside the game for the first time and does not know how it can affect the game. He allows everyone to send him friend requests. He only understands that if this notification came out on some very gloomy map, it would have a bad effect on his psyche. The blonde picks up a stone from the ground and thinks that he will go the shortest way and speed up his process a little more. He throws a stone at the window of Sonya's pub. Two burning eyes appear from behind the curtain inside the house, and a huge woman dressed like a Viking comes out and shouts loudly who dared to break her glass. The character's window pops up, in which it is written that the name of this character is the barbarian Sonya. She is the 13th level in class Berserker, the second most powerful in the village of beginners and the only warrior capable of fighting on equal terms with Sila Weist. Sonya orders whoever broke her glass to get out immediately. Zia smiles and says that he is already here. The woman asks if he did it and, without waiting for an answer, strikes. Zia dodges and thinks that she still has the same explosive temper and, fortunately, the past few times when she was angry, her attacks were quite simple and you can just dodge and let her let off steam. Barbarians are the inhabitants of the Red Steppes of the North, who were captured by monsters. By this time, she and her parents had already left those lands and opened this tavern, where they began to sell Jim's delicious cakes and a special dish of barbarians from her tribe, which everyone likes. But because of the irascible nature of the inhabitants of the Novichok settlement, they are afraid of her. Sonya swings the club and the blonde jumps away. He knows that this woman is an integral part of the plan and the only person who can prove that Mr. Weist has gone off the righteous path. Sonya throws a club at Zia and he barely manages to dodge. The young man thinks that he almost forgot that he is still only at the first level and his dexterity is too low, and that if it were not for more than 100 cycles of passing the game, he would have finished playing by now. The woman rushes at Zia with her fists and screams loudly. He decides not to complicate the task for himself and throws a few coins at Sonya's head. She stops in disbelief. Zia says that this is compensation for the broken window of her pub and at the same time payment for her hiring for half an hour. Sonya's tavern does not bring much money, and usually she helps the residents of the village according to the instructions of the headman. As long as the player is willing to pay, she will fight for him for 70 copper coins in half an hour. In addition, the repair of the tavern window costs only 5 copper coins. A blue window is displayed in which it is written that the hiring time is 29 minutes and 59 seconds. Sonya and Z are walking down the village street. The woman looks like a real giant compared to the young man, since he barely reaches her elbow with his head. Sonya asks why the blonde hired her. He replies that he gives her a chance to deal with one not very cool person. They come to the gate of the village, from which the guards come out with their captain, a blonde man. The blue window of the character is displayed, in which it is written that the name of this character is Martin. He is the captain of the village guards and he is the 11th level. Zia says that this is him and she can give him a good punch. Martin is the captain of the village guard, but his ancestors were loggers. It so happened that the barbarians plundered his house. Due to the fact that the house was in the wilderness, there were very few guards and the barbarians easily dealt with it. Martin's mother pushes him behind the wall of the house and he miraculously survives, but loses the whole family. And that was the reason why he became the captain of the village guards. Zia tells Sonya to beat him, but not to kill him. Although Sonya is a barbarian, she has nothing to do with those robbers, and even the headman himself personally asked her to stay in the settlement, since there are very few soldiers in it. And Martin poured all his hatred on Sonya, but due to the fact that he is the captain of the village guards, she still had no opportunity to settle scores. The woman rushes forward with great speed, shouting that she will do it with great pleasure. Zia thinks that since he hired Sonya, she can vent her anger on Martin without fear of being expelled from the village for violation. Martin shouts at her to stop and pulls out his sword, but the woman knocks it out with one blow. Sonya says that he is a real weakling and someone like him still uses his position to drink from her for free. The blonde somehow gets up and swings his sword again, shouting insults. Sonya covers his face with her hand and asks if he has said everything, and that now she will shove everything back to him that he has said to her all this time. She throws him to the ground and starts beating him. The guards run to his aid, but Sonya throws them all away. The woman lifts Martin by the collar, but Zia says that's enough. Varvara asks how much time is left. The young man replies that 40 minutes. Sonya looks at him uncomprehendingly, but then agrees to this time. The blonde thinks that the barbarians, having fought enough, can be generous, and she gave him another 40 minutes of hiring. He discovered this trick during the passage of the past 177 cycles, and this time will be enough to move on to the plot point, the key to completing the task. Sonya asks where to now. Zia tells her to follow him. They come to a dark forest. A blue window is illuminated, in which it is written that this is a rotting forest, which was originally lush and beautiful, absolutely calm, but since someone penetrated it with evil forces, the peaceful forest has turned into a very dangerous place, Everything here has begun to rot and dry. Skeletons and souls began to decompose in this rotting atmosphere. The natural cycle has been changed by the witch, and the crows enclose her will, eagerly looking out for every piece of living flesh passing here. A small lake with a passage to the island in its middle is shown ahead. The whole path is littered with old skeletons. The man asks the dark shadow if people have invaded here, and, it seems, the victim has appeared again. 35 minutes later, deep in the rotting forest, Zia and Sonya are walking along a half-overgrown path. A woman is looking at skeletons hanging from trees. She says that this is a rotting forest on the western outskirts of the village of novices, and that even monsters don't come here. So why did the young man come here? Did he really decide to die here? Zia says that he hasn't thought about it yet and hired her to help him with one case, and that they have already come. They come out into a cleared clearing, on which a huge black pentagram is painted. Sonya asks if the forest witch did it and warns that there are 10 minutes left before the end of the hiring, and after that she will immediately leave him and leave here. Zia thinks she has more strength than intelligence, but she's still very careful. He tells her not to be so insensitive and that when they are done, he will look after her pup, and if she is worried, then he asks her on behalf of the ancestors to believe her, and that his blood is her blood. Sonya is very amazed and begins to unfasten the knife from her hip, saying that he even knows the contract ceremony accepted in her tribe and that he is an interesting kid. She takes out a knife and cuts Zia's finger with it. The young man thinks that the right of concluding a barbarian contract can be used only after you go deep into the area with monsters from the 60th level in the Red Steppes, and among all those tested, Sonya trusts this contract the most. The woman licks the blood from her finger and red chains appear around them, which are woven into a bizarre pattern, and 2 blue windows are illuminated, one of which says that the contract has been concluded and the level of sympathy for Sonya has been temporarily raised to the level of a close friend. The effect time is 5 minutes. Another blue window says that the effect of the contract is that in the next 5 minutes, all the damage Sonya receives is transferred to Zia's body. He says that now, regardless of what she sees or hears, she must believe him and he will never endanger her life. She can generally sleep under the nearest bush and wait for his signal. Sonya punches herself in the chest and says that she will do it without any problems. Zia stands in the center of the pentagram and begins to say that the silent orphan who destroyed everything around and irretrievably perished in the dark flame. During the black rain all the worlds fade. The moon sets and all living things emit a scream. At the moment of suffering, on the night of the moon's sunset, all living things groan and perish. Cute Lorax, he brought a sacrifice for her offering. Crows begin to circle above the pentagram and a vortex of energy rises. A white-haired woman with a snake's tail appears. A blue character window is displayed, in which it is written that the name of this character is Milo Lorax. She is the 12th level and the elite boss of the village of novices, the witch class. She is a sorceress serving the abyss. Her abilities do not come from a mortal body, but from the art of enslaving and seducing. She shouts that he is not her servant, but knows the summoning spell and asks who he is. Zia bows and says that he is a servant of a servant and a slave of a slave. Milo Lorax says that he must be Martin's subordinate, and this kid brought her very good meat. Zia squints at the dormouse sitting near the tree. The white-haired woman asks how he managed to bring her here. The young man replies that he first got her drunk and brought her to the forest, and then tricked her into feeding a poisonous mushroom from the rotting forest to immobilize her. Milo Lorax says that it's not bad and that this body is so strong, so full of strength, so fragrant, and that he is a very smart kid and should definitely get a reward, and how he looks at becoming her food too. She throws herself at the blonde man, and he says that it's the same thing every time and that she's still the same beast. Zia shouts to Sonya to destroy the cute Lorax. The woman immediately rushes to the attack and hits the witch with all her might. Zia turns out to be splattered with blood and thinks that it's always like this, and even though I've been through this story more than 100 times, I've never gotten used to how barbarians fight. Milo Lorax is the boss of the novice village and an elite witch of the 12th level. To compete with her, you need about 5 squads of adventurers of the same level. But if you catch her off guard, then a barbarian berserker of the 13th level can finish her off with one blow. The insignificant boss of the 12th level has been passed 177 times. It's very boring. After all, it is much more interesting to pass the Scylla. Zia tells Sonya to pick up her trophies, since it's time for them to return. He thinks that in the public beta version, if a game character kills a monster, then the player will not get a drop of experience. The barbarian shakes the bell and says that there are a lot of objects in the body of this monster. Zia thinks that the hiring period is over, and he had to give Sonya all the trophies so that she would protect him on the way back, and that it's all just for the sake of praise. Sonya says that she got a good catch and a lot of new ingredients for cooking her special dish, which is prepared only by barbarians in her tribe. The blonde says he's glad she's happy and they need to get back as soon as possible. They leave, and a black raven and a scorpion look after them. A crowd of game characters and players gathered in the newcomers' settlement on the main street. The players are talking among themselves about the fact that all the key game characters have gathered, so someone has done a lot of things. They heard that someone beat the captain of the village guards with the help of a game character, and that probably this is an old showdown between game characters, since no player could do it. The air conditioner assumes that it's that guy again. The soft drink says that it's quite possible, since he even knew that Ms. Weiss didn't have enough milk and they really got a fatal blow. The air conditioner says that Scylla and Ak are also here, although in normal games game characters cannot leave a certain place, and these also know how to stare at the hype. The blonde man tells Scylla, hugging her and holding her chin with 2 fingers, that he swears to her that he never told anyone about that child, and that he had just healed Martin. The air conditioner thinks that the game characters here are just like real people. The blue window of the character is highlighted, in which it is written that the name of this character is Ak Weist. He is the 14th level, and a former adventurer, now the husband of Scylla. Martin with a bandaged head shouts that they are coming. The village includes Zia and Sonya. The captain of the village guard shouts that she still dares to appear here. A blue window appears above the blonde's head, in which it is written that his reputation has dropped by 90 stats and now he is in exile. The guards shout that they have wounded the captain of the village guards and perhaps they are rotten traitors and they cannot be allowed to escape in any case. The guards shout that they have wounded the captain of the village guards and perhaps they are rotten traitors and they cannot be allowed to escape in any case. Players shout that this is actually a player, and that he can't even kill a bird, and this guy has challenged so many game characters, and that he is a werewolf. The village of novices is a resurrection location where all data and progress are reset. The guards make way and the headman comes forward. He says that Zia is no longer welcome here, and Sonya, although she is his accomplice, but someone must resist the monsters invading this village and that they can forget about this incident, and she can safely stay here. The headman turns around. Sonya says that she will stay without any problems. Martin is very angry and blazes with fire. The old man says that Zia hired Sonya to attack the captain of the guards of the village of Martin. This is the gravest crime that should be punished with death. However, given his former title of honorary settler, he will allow him to leave and become an exile. The players talk and say that there is also the title of the exile, how in general it is possible to hire game characters and how he did it. Is he sick? Since they did not have time to start, and he has already made so much noise, maybe this is some kind of hidden task and it's a pity that he ruined everything. Swords are pointed at Zia, but he raises his hands up and says that he is very grateful to the headman for his generosity, and asks to let him say a few words in his defense first. Martin shouts at him not to talk nonsense, but to get lost. The blonde waves his hand and shouts to Sonya about the request to borrow her trophies, like her recent comrade in arms. Sonya replies that it's not a question, and throws him a bag, which, ricocheting off the captain of the village guards, flies into the hands of Zia. People laugh, and he shouts angrily. Zia looks hard at Martin and pulls out a golden bell. The captain asks, startled, why he is looking at him. The blonde says he remembered something interesting and rings a bell. Martin's fist flies into Ak's cheek and he falls to the ground, clutching his broken nose. Mr. Weiss shouts that he is sick and will never wait for treatment from him again. Tears are streaming down the captain's face. Scylla rushes to her husband, who barely gets up. Zia rings the bell again and asks Martin to continue. He rushes at Ak again with a shout and starts beating him. The crowd in horror begins to shout and ask to stop him. Kyla begs Zia to stop. The headman orders him to stop, and only after that the young man removes the bell and tells him that he has seen a lot and probably understands what this behavior of Martin means. The headman is silent for a while, then orders Ak to remove the spell from Martin. A man with a swollen face reluctantly obeys. Martin clutches his head and screams terribly. Red smoke is coming out of his mouth and eyes. The guard says it's rotting and asks the gods to save them. Other guards say that Captain Martin has undergone decomposition and now it is no wonder that he has not given them money lately, and what a shame it is, and I, who exposed the rot, am the messenger of the 7 gods. The air conditioner screams that there is such a plot and that I didn't spoil anything at all, and this is something unreal. Zia himself thinks that the first stage has been passed and that with the usual passage you need to bypass absolutely every inhabitant of the settlement and go through 20 or 30 plots, and only then you can gain enough reputation and leave the settlement. But after a little time the settlement can be literally destroyed, and he realized this after 3 games. This is the simplest way not only to quickly fill the reputation, but also to quickly pull out this traitor and prevent a catastrophe in the village. A blue window is displayed, in which it is written that the hidden task to uncover the rotten captain has been completed and his reputation has increased by 200 stats. So now he can leave the village of beginners. Zia thinks that he has earned a reputation. Now it would be possible to raise the level, since he is still sitting on the first level, and now you can safely build a relationship with Scylla. But first you need to get rid of garbage. The headman says that he saved the village from disaster, so he will restore its status as an honorary settler. And Sonia's reward will be a 3-month exemption from rent. The woman happily thanks him and hits Zia, stating that it's all thanks to him, so now they will be friends. Zia asks her friend to reveal the truth to Sile, since it is impossible for her to remain in the dark, and she can also take the maid. Sonia says that there is no problem and goes to the Weiss couple. Zia thinks that for Sonia, the weakling Auk is a servant, and for Scylla, the betrayal of a weakling is a disgrace. Sonia will tell about the betrayal of Auk, and then take this maid away. The record time in which she turned males into men was a week, and he wondered what would happen this time. Zia tells the headman that since he saved the village, he is entitled to a reward. The old man says he has just returned his honorary title to him. The blonde says that he was already his and he knows that he wants to bargain and it's better for him to get his reward, because no one will come for it anyway. He squeezes the elder's cheeks. The players are talking about the fact that Zia has completed a hidden task and is now blackmailing the headman. A pink-haired girl is sitting on a high stone wall of the village and, blushing, says that this game is just a miracle. The headman creates 4 balls in which money, a ticket, a green heart, and a red exclamation mark hover. He thanks Zia for what he has done for the newcomer settlement and says that as a reward he can choose one of these. The young man immediately says that he chooses a task with an assignment. The headman takes out an exclamation mark and gives it to the blonde and says that he hopes that this time he will succeed and wishes him good luck. Zia looks at him dumbfounded and thinks that this is his new line, but remembers that in one of the cycles the headman already said these words before his death, and this time. The headman leaves, and the young man is surrounded by other players, but he shouts after the old man whether he remembers him. He knows that this is impossible and that the game characters don't remember anything. Zia tries to run after the headman, but the players vying with each other start asking him about all sorts of nonsense. The blonde is in despair, but after a second he orders everyone to be silent and asks if everyone has a weapon. Players wave shovels and picks. The air conditioner shouts that he has a rolling pin. Zia says that he needs to activate the task and they can apply to participate in it. He thinks that he used to start doing tasks only with game characters, but it's the first time he does it with players and he's very interested. The young man clicks on the exclamation mark and the task window is displayed. The purpose of the task is to clean up the outskirts of the rotting forest from monsters. The requirements for participants are to have a level above the second and possess weapons. The rewards for completing the task will be 1,000 experience stats and 3 silver coins. Zia says that the task has already been created and they only need to meet the requirements. He opens the window of his squad and sees only 6 avatars, including brandy, air conditioning, and a soft drink. Zia says it looks like it's just them. The rest of the players sadly leave. The blonde says that tomorrow at 3 o'clock in the afternoon he is waiting for them all at this place, and if there are other players who can meet the requirements, then he will be glad to see everyone. He finds the team chat and is very surprised by this. The air conditioner writes that in the morning, when they were doing the task, they mentioned it to Mrs. Weist. Zia thanks him. Brandy writes that their leader would also like to ask, but is very shy, and asks if the boss is collecting the sympathy stats of that woman. Zia writes that this is how it is. A soft drink sends a very candid image of Scylla. The blonde's nose is bleeding and he thinks that he is also a fan of her. A soft drink asks what can be done when sympathy increases. Zia asks what he thinks about it himself. The soft drink replies that at the workshop they said that this game is for all ages. Brandy writes that this is not yet clear and said that the speed of time flow 1 in 1,000 was tested just 1 year. If you add another time difference in the game and in reality, then you get 3 to 1,000 and the game time will be equal to 3,000 years. So many high-class artificial intelligences are quite enough for something very interesting to appear, and why he can't dream. Ziya thinks that the game developer's name is Huang, and according to them, he has been in the game for 1 year of real time and it is accelerated. So it feels like 1,000, and because of the time ratio, 3,000 years will eventually come out. For so many years and so many times to start over, all the game characters should forget him. So he always believed that with each new revival, the game characters are completely reset. But what if this data is not completely erased, but is stored locked somewhere and they still remember it? Z remembers Aolin Sela, a white-haired girl with lilac skin and a blue-eyed blonde with big breasts, and rolls her eyes with anticipation. But he immediately tells himself to cool down immediately, because he thought that the game would reset everything and played like a psycho, and if they really remember him, then he will be chopped into pieces. Ziya approaches the house of the Weiss and thinks that it is certainly known that Sela cannot awaken her memories, and since she did not come to chop him into pieces, it means that she does not remember anything. He opens the door and sees a girl rocking a small child in tears, and thinks that she is still suffering because of Ox's betrayal and he can only wait until she feels better. By the way, how many times is he waiting for her like this? Ziya closes the door and leans against the outside wall of the house. Closing his eyes, the young man thinks that it's for the best that Sela doesn't remember anything. During closed testing, the 4th cycle, in a rotting forest, Kyla shouts Ziya rather run away and barely repels the attacks. Rotten Martin screams that no one will escape and they will all die here. A raven appears, fire is pouring out of its beak on the blonde. Mrs. Weiss covers it with herself and dies. Closed testing of the fantasy world, the 3rd cycle. Ziya cuts the monster with a fiery sword and a blue window is displayed, in which it is written that his experience has increased by 150 stats. He sheaths his sword. Sela waves his huge sword a little behind and shouts that this is very cool, and he needs to continue in the same spirit. The blonde says that tomorrow he will organize a group and come back here, as it will not be good if the two of them kill all the monsters here. Sela stretches out her hand to the young man and says that tomorrow she needs to take care of the child all day and she will not be able to go with him. And he is still so weak and she is very worried about him. She pats him on the head. Ziya replies that he will be fine, because I will be with him Lan and Tara. The next day, the young man returns to the same place with 2 girls. They stand back to back. The blue window of the character is displayed, in which it is written that the level of Ziya is 7th. His specialties are swordsman and robber. The red-haired girl asks if he is sure that 3 of them will be enough for this. The blonde replies that their task is to clear the forest from the monsters that have begun to decompose, and if they cannot cope with them, they will have to run away. The blue window of the character is highlighted, in which it is written that the name of this character is I Am a Doe. She is of the 7th level and her specialty is a militia. She says that Sela is not here and if they encounter something really dangerous, she will not be able to protect him. A lilac-haired and green-eyed girl shouts that they will stop arguing, as the monsters are advancing. The blue window of the character is highlighted, in which it is written that the name of this character is Tara. She is of the 6th level. Her specialty is a priestess of the lowest level. Monsters are running at them from all sides. Ilan stabs them with his spear. Ziya cuts them with his sword. Ilan screams that the young man stole her monster. The blonde replies that she also stole his monsters. 2 monsters rush to Tara at once. Ilan and Ziya barely manage to kill them. Landing, the young man accidentally plunges the blade of the sword between 2 stones. The lilac-haired woman shouts to him in fright that there is a monster behind him. Ziya realizes in horror that he will not have time to pull out his sword. The monster is engulfed by fire. The blonde thanks the confused Tara. After a while they sit in the shade and Ziya with the monster says there was no problem. Ilan turns around and sees a huge monster rushing at them. They exclaim that this is the king of the boars and that even he is decaying. Ilan shouts that this monster is level 13 and they can't handle it. She asks the young man to take Tara with him and run away from here and rushes to attack. Ziya draws her sword and rushes to her aid, saying that she will not let her be a hero and that they will leave here together. The monster instantly throws him far to the side. The young man thinks that there was no boar king in the last 2 cycles and is this a new plot? He turns around and sees Yudo impaled on a branch and Tara lying near a stone in an unnatural position. The boar king comes very close and Ziya realizes that he is far from the 13th level. The wounded young man thinks who developed this plot at all, in which monsters have a random level in the village of newcomers. The blonde man runs to the settlement with the last of his strength and calls Sela, asking to save his comrades. The earth shudders and the boar king appears, who throws him high up, clearly intending to finally eat him. A strong blow throws the monster aside and Sonya appears. She rushes to the attack and shouts that this tomboy is still a frequent guest in her pub and she will cover him. With the second blow, the woman finishes off the Boar King, who only grunts plaintively. The blood-soaked Sonya licks her lips and says that it's not bad and now she has another product for her special dish. Sonya takes out a knife and says that this can be used to make a huge batch of her special dish, since the main ingredient of the blood-stirring viands is the blood of monsters. Zia begs the woman to save Yolan and Terra. She replies that since they dared to break into the rotting forest, and even stumbled upon the king of the boars, they are already dead and it is completely useless to save them. Zia says in horror that this can't be, because the last 2 times they stayed alive. Sonya raises her hand and looks at the sky, in which thousands of black birds with red eyes are circling. She joyfully shouts that these are bloodthirsty crows, unprecedented prey, and they must also want to become ingredients of her blood-stirring viands and rushes away. The young man asks her to come back. Crows swoop down on the carcass of the Boar King and begin to lift it, attacking the blonde at the same time. Zia shouts that they are taking the monster away. Sonya is furious as the crows carry the monster carcass into the sky and shouts that they dared to steal her thing. She strikes, but she slips. The woman screams that she should have killed them with one blow and returned her pig and grabs the young man by his clothes, dragging him along. On the main street of the Novichok settlement, people crowded around the bulletin board. They say that new assignments have finally appeared. That one of them is from the barbarian Sonya, and they did not think that she could write, "Is the corpse of the rotting Boar King so important to her?" and that in fact the barbarians are terribly stubborn. If something was stolen from them, then this thing should be returned at any cost. Therefore, in the year when the barbarians invaded the village, most of the guards were afraid to fight them back, because otherwise they would have been hunted for the rest of their days. It is written on a piece of paper that the task is called boiling blood. It is necessary, together with Sonya, to exterminate all the bloodthirsty ravens of the rotting forest and return the body of the Boar King. The reward for completing the task will be 20 boxes of blood-stirring barbarian viands, 10 silver coins and free accommodation in a tavern. This is an assignment from Sony. Zia puts her fingerprint on this errand. Sila asks if he really needs to go to do this task, because he only miraculously escaped, and she needs to stay in the village. She will not be able to go with him. The blonde man replies that he should go, because the reason why the Boar King began to decompose is the contagious curse of decomposition. And the crows that Sonya killed had the same curse. Surely it was the crows who brought it from somewhere. Besides, he cannot allow their victim to be in vain, and so that Sile is in danger. Sonya and Z are cracking down on bloodthirsty crows. The young man remembers Yolan and Terra and kills monsters even more fiercely. He looks at 2 graves, in one of which the priestess's rod is stuck, and in the other, a spear, and says that he has won. Tears come to his eyes, and Zia thinks what is he doing, because they are just game characters, and he will eventually return to reality. But the feelings here are all his anger, his revenge, and his pain. The last 2 times they helped him pass the village of novices. It doesn't matter if they remember him, but they have always been his comrades. If he still stays in the game next time, he will never come to them for help. Sonya joyfully beats the young man and shouts that she has finally found him, and since he got her so many ingredients, she is going to treat him. In the pub, Zia and Sonya are sitting together. The young man awkwardly holds his mug. Sonya exclaims that they are friends now and they would know what a weakling this guy was at the very beginning. And now his strength is worth considering. Perseverance makes weaklings strong. The woman happily shouts to Chef Jim to get the cakes, as she treats everyone, and that no one will come home today. After a while, one of the pub's visitors is lying on the table. Someone is on the bar counter. Someone is greedily emptying a jug. Sonya is sleeping in the corner with a barrel in her arms, and some girl is pestering her. Sila removes the annoying girl with one blow and joyfully shouts that he is back and, hugging him, says that he shouldn't have done it and that he doesn't need to risk it anymore. Zia says that he is a brave wanderer and risk is the most ordinary thing for him and there is nothing terrible about it. He thinks that a game character is worried about him. But in the last 2 games, when all the conditions for leaving the village of newcomers were met, he had exactly the same 12th level. The reputation is about the same, but he has never passed such plots. Sonya wakes up and puts her hand on his shoulder. Somewhere in the distance Auk is angry. The headman stands next to him. The young man thinks that later there will be another news about the village of novices, that it was destroyed in a battle with a monster. He does not understand what is happening at the moment. Perhaps it is some hidden plot that he did not notice. Jim the cook bursts in and shakes a broken bottle. He shouts that they are all fools and will soon die, and they are still sitting and eating here. That monster from the forest will tear them all apart. The visitors of the pub say with displeasure that he has come to spoil everyone's mood again. If he did not cook such delicious cakes, he would have been thrown out of the village a long time ago. He himself also eats and drinks here, only about the rotting forest, and can chatter what to say about this cursed place, and he is already tired. One of the visitors shakes him by the shoulders and shouts to get out. Zia thinks that Jim is the next game character who gives hints. The visitor shouts at him to go to another place to freak out. The cook replies that he is not crazy at all. The young man gets up from the stool and asks why they all have to die. Jim looks at him hopefully and suddenly falls to his knees, shouting that it's all his fault, and it's because of him that everyone died. He also had to enter this damned forest with them. He got drunk and then fell behind. All the guards went ahead. In the forest, a poisonous fog and a woman's laughter appeared from nowhere, and then the whole squad turned into skeletons. The guard looks at his hand, which has become a bone, and screams in horror. Jim ran away, even though he should have died too. The guard stretches out his hands to him and calls for help. The headman says that someone in the forest controls decomposition and poisonous gas, and he killed a squad of guards. The angry visitor shakes the cook again and shouts why he didn't tell about it right away. Another man says they don't know if the cook is making a fool of himself. Martin shouts that he definitely doesn't think anything right now. A blue window opens in front of Zia, which says that the force task has been activated. They all have to enter the rotting forest because of Jim in order to find the true cause of the decomposition of the forest. Zia thinks that the new force task is something new and that the depths of the rotting forest have never been opened before. The announcement of closed testing says that in the 177th cycle of Zia and in the previous 15 cycles, some new duplicate plots were opened each time. The plots were not copied completely. In the same place it was possible to pass different monsters. Then sometimes a new plot was opened, but very rarely. After I went through all the available plots, a crazy mode was launched in which it was necessary to collect different forms of the game's characters. For example, an entry-level warrior maiden, a holy warrior maiden, a warrior maiden forced to fall. On the second day, the headman gathered all the adventurers and warriors of the village to enter the rotting forest under the guidance of the captain of the guards of the village, Martin. Everyone is walking, cautiously looking around, along the uneven path. Zia looks at the blue task window and thinks that the force task that prompted all the residents of the village of novices to go on a hike. And is it really an accelerated transition to the finale of the plot with the village of novices? He removes the window and remembers that the village will be destroyed in the battle with the monster, and this battle is still a few years away. The last 2 times, having gained enough reputation and experience, he was in such a hurry to open a new map that he watched such an important plot, and that since he was activated, now he will find out everything. The young man takes hold of the hilt of the sword. A terrible scream is heard from the front, and the poisonous fumes cover those who go first. Martin shouts what Jim is going to do. The cook opens the flask and says that now he knows how to resist these fumes and that this time it will not frighten him. Martin shouts that an alcoholic has woken up in him at a very inopportune moment and he does not need alcohol. Jim douses himself with the contents of the bottle and shouts to the ghosts that he is already here. The captain of the village guard asks him to return. Zia thinks that this is not alcohol, but the blood-stirring food of barbarians, and is it really a chain of tasks? Due to the fact that he brought the Boar King to Sonya, she made this dish and therefore activated the plot, which was not in the last 2 games. Jim says there's no way he's going to run away this time and sets himself on fire. His clothes flash. He runs forward into the depths of the fog, shouting to his brothers that he is back. Monsters start running out of the vapors. Zia shouts to Martin that they need to leave now. He grabs his head and swears. The forest quickly catches fire. The captain of the village guards shouts to everyone to retreat. Somehow running out of the forest, they try to catch their breath, but thousands of bloodthirsty monsters fly out of the forest. Many red eyes appear from the bushes. People scream in horror and ask the gods to protect them. Kyla pulls Zia after her and shouts at him not to stop and keep running. Huge monsters begin to come out of the forest and deal with the people who have come. Martin shouts that this is bad and they head for the village. Zia thinks that the battle with the monster that destroyed the village of newcomers is not the battle with the monster a few years later, but the battle with the monsters from the rotting forest right now. Martin commands everyone to get ready. The warriors rush to the attack. Suddenly, Martin pierces the guard in front of him with his sword. Zia shouts to Sonya and Sila to turn around. The captain of the village guards is engulfed in blue flames and he is grinning madly. Ox says that he, too, has begun to decompose. Martin looks at them with reddened eyes and says that they are all his food now. Milo Lorax appears next to him. Sonya asks what it is and why it is so huge. Scylla says that she did not know that there are such monsters in the vicinity of the village of novices. Auk shouts that she is the source of the rotting forest decomposition, and if you kill her, the problem will be solved. Scylla shouts that she cannot be allowed to approach the village. Auk casts an enhancement spell on them and Sonya. Zia thinks that, it turns out, the village was defeated because of this traitor Martin. He activates all his skills. The curse of burning blood is manifested by a red pattern on his face. Its effect is the addition of 15 stats to all characteristics. The duration is 20 minutes. Limited to the 25th level, the penalty for the difference in levels is minus 20 blood stats every second. Icy persistence is manifested by an icy crust on the right hand. Its effect is the addition of 15 stats to all attack characteristics. The duration is 20 minutes. Limited to the 20th level, the penalty for the difference in levels is minus 15 blood stats every second. A Raging Spirit has the effect of plus 10 power stats. 25% are added to a sudden strike. Is limited to the 27th level. The penalty for the difference in levels is minus 20 mana stats every second. Zia rushes to the attack. He thinks that the skills acquired in the last 2 games with a difference in levels will not last long, so it remains only to act very quickly. The young man rushes at Martin, shouting that he is a traitor. The blonde man cuts the sword of the captain of the village guard with one blow. Martin shouts that he was hiding his strength and he should have gotten rid of him long ago. Zia says it's mutual. Zia strikes Martin, which he easily blocks with his modified hand. He says he will show him a surprise and shows the faces of Yolan and Terra on his hand. Martin says that they are his friends and have become such good food for his strengthening. Zia, in a rage, swings his sword and shouts that it was he who put decomposition on the Boar King and he is a coward who must die. A blue warning window pops up in front of him. Martin shouts that no one asked him, ungrateful, to go to clean up the rotting forest from monsters and interfere with his plans. And I am a deer, and Terra are just an ordinary sacrifice, like other people. Zia's sword gets stuck in the hand of the captain of the village guards and asks if the missing guards were his handiwork. Martin replies that it is true and they have all become his strength. The young man shouts why he betrayed them, because the headman believed him and even entrusted him with the post of captain of the village guards. This is how he protects them. Martin shouts that there would be something to protect, not this village patronizing barbarians, and there were cowards relying on barbarians to survive, and that this is a funny joke. He throws the blonde far to the side and launches a fireball at him. A Scylla appears in the path of a deadly projectile and covers the young man with himself. He screams with tears in his eyes and wakes up. Zia is sitting near the wall of the house. There is a Kyla in front of him and looks at him very strangely and frightened. The young man tries to escape and remember how he managed to fall asleep. The girl grabs him by the collar and asks him to stop. She asks if he had a nightmare. Zia stands with her back to her and replies that this is not a nightmare, but a memory. But what happened then will never happen again. Scylla asks what he is talking about. The blonde replies that he should have told the truth about her ex-husband Ock earlier, then she would have worried less. The girl says that this is not his mistake and invites him to come in so as not to bake in the sun. She squeezes his cheeks and says that in fact she has always wanted a younger brother, and from now on he will be a brother bestowed upon her by the 7 gods, and the doors of her house are always open for him. Zia thinks she doesn't want to be her little brother. A loud baby crying is heard from the house, and Scylla runs to the door, saying that Diff is awake and Zia I need to go inside as soon as possible. He comes in and thinks that no matter how many times he enters this room, every corner knows how to be at home, and Scylla is also always engaged only in feeding. The girl feeds the baby from a bottle and sentences him to eat. The young man thinks that this is boiled goat's milk, and no matter how much he looks at this maternal radiance, it is still beautiful. But Scylla does not know how to feed the baby at all. Zia asks her to give him a bottle. She fulfills his request. The blonde says that it must be a bottle of compote and there is still liquid left. It's not very good for the baby. He says that the bottle needs to be boiled first, then wiped thoroughly, and very quickly does what he says. The girl looks at the guy with round eyes in bewilderment. Zia pours milk into a bottle and says that milk should not be too hot or cold and that such as his will be just right. Scylla and the baby are watching him very closely. Zia takes Diff in her arms and gives her milk, telling her to drink slowly and take her time. The girl says she understood. The blonde puts the girl in the crib and she laughs merrily. He says she's smart. Scylla asks if he is the legendary stay-at-home dad. She sits down on the bed next to the crib and asks what I've been through all these years, being a brave wanderer. The young man plays with the child and replies that it is a secret. He thinks that even in the third game he managed to get rid of the Snake Witch, but he could not prevent Sila's death. In the fourth game, he also tried, but once he stumbles, and nothing can be changed. Zia asks if Kyla wants to leave here. She plays with her daughter and says that there is no point in leaving this village of newcomers, since Diff is here, and the village needs her protection. The young man says that this is also true in hopes that when Diff grows up, she will be as beautiful as Sila. The girl blushes and says that he is a flattering prankster. Zia assures her that his words are the pure truth and thinks that she does not know that she is a quarter relative of that seductress from the rotting forest. When she grows up, the two of them will differ only in voice and skin. Sila shyly thanks the young man and looks away. He says that she can thank him with a deed and, since he needs to continue exploring the rotting forest, she can go with him. The girl looks up and asks if he inspired Sonya in the same way. Zia scratches her neck and says that he hired her mainly to expose Akka's betrayal, but the real lair of the monsters of the rotting forest is still hidden. He remembers this source of calamity, the witch spirit that possessed Martin. Zia takes her hands and says, calling her dear, that in order for the tragedy not to happen again, they must get rid of the root of the problem, and so she can become the heroine of the newcomer settlement, and her and Diff's future will be secured. Sila asks why he is doing this for her. A blue window is displayed in which it is written that Sila's sympathy has grown to the level of a friend of the heart. He squeezes her hand and says it's to repay for saving his life. Zia thinks that if this cycle of the game is the last, then before he finds a way out of this fantasy world, he will prevent all the tragedies that have happened.